Hey guys, this is Matt with forhydroponics.com, and today we're going to be talking about how to amend your outdoor garden or your containers or a raised garden bed. Now over time, your garden bed or your soil that you've been working with can start being depleted of nutrients or also have pH issues. And if you're starting a new garden or amending your old outdoor garden, depending on what crops you've been growing there and whether or not you've been doing crop rotation, that area can start to have lower levels of nutrients than you might want, or start having pH levels that might not be great for the plants that you're gardening. So we'll talk about how to reintroduce some of these nutrients and back into your medium, and also how to get a proper texture to make sure your plants can grow properly. So when you're rating soil, you want to look at the texture of it, and then you also want to look at the fertility. Fertility being how alive it is and also how much nutrients it has in it. And then last, you want to see what is the pH of the medium of the soil, and so that the nutrients that are in there are available to the plants. So when it comes to texture, the first thing that on one end of the spectrum would be sandy. Sandy soil, sand has large particles that are loosely packed together. This allows water and roots and nutrients to flow freely through it, and at that point it's almost too free. Water will wash away nutrients, and roots have a hard time making a nice steady root structure in that loose material. And on the other end of the spectrum, you're going to have clay soil. Clay is going to have very fine particles packed together that won't allow water or nutrients or roots to move through them almost at all, or very freely. And we need to correct the texture of the soil before we can really grow plants properly. So if you have a sandy soil, I would recommend adding something like a good topsoil or humus. Humus is a great way to reintroduce a lot of microbial life back into your garden, but also to add water retention and nutrient retention to sandy soils. And if you have a clay soil, one great way to break up the clay soil is gypsum, which we have here by Espoma, and then also humus does a great job of lightening up clay and adding some extra fluff to that clay soil. The way you can test how what your soil is doing right now is called the clump test. Grab a ball of the soil that you're going to be using this summer, get it somewhat damp, either with a mister or a little bit of water. You don't want it soaked, just damp, and clump it into a ball. If you can tap the ball and it falls apart, it's sandy. And then, like we said, we're going to want to correct that. And then if we have a ball that we clump together and you can take a piece of it and roll it between your fingers and create like a ribbon, basically, that's going to be more of a clay-based soil, and we're going to need to correct that as well. We're going to have issues, during the course of the summer. So after we've gotten the correct texture, it should be the texture of about a breadcrumbs, something they call it sandy loam. So if you ever went and bought some good organic potting soil, the texture of that potting soil is about what you're looking for in your garden. So to maximize your space, you're really going to want to make sure you get the right texture. And then next we're going to talk about would be the pH. If you have good nutrients in your soil, or if you've added these nutrients that we're going to talk about in a second into your soil, you have to have the right pH to allow that nutrients to get to the plant, and so the plant can access it. So if you have done a soil test, there's ways that you can send your soil samples in. If you're really serious about gardening on a large scale, you definitely want to spend the money on a lab soil test. It'll tell you pretty much everything you need to know, what's in the soil, bacterial, fungal, nutrient levels, and pH levels, and they can probably give you some texture information as well. If you are going to just do a small scale thing, we do have some simple soil test kits on our website. One does pH. If you're going to test your soil pH with the kit, make sure you do a couple different tests in different areas to get a real average of the area, especially if you're doing a large area. Get an average. Don't just test one or two spots and then apply. Make sure you get a nice wide range of testing, and then adjust accordingly. And the way we're going to adjust that pH is going to be with the garden lime. The garden lime is going to help us, and then we're also going to use the soil acidifier. So, if you need to go down, we're going to use the soil acidifier. Some plants like this, like the hydrangeas, it helps turn hydrangeas blue, and I know that blueberries also like a low pH. So definitely don't be afraid to do your research on what plants you're gardening this summer and what they prefer when it comes to nutrients and pH ranges, and then we can get you right where you need to be. If you need to go up, we're going to be using the garden lime. So garden lime will raise the soil pH As organic matter decays, it lets off acids, which tend to lower pH. So if you have a healthy garden, more than likely you're going to be on the low side, and you're going to be using some lime on a regular basis to readjust that pH. The way that we get this stuff into our actual soil, and it's the same we're going to do with all these products. It's add it to the top 1 to 3 inches of topsoil, or the top part of your soil, before you till. If you're just top dressing an already existing plant, I would say scratch the soil surface with your hand or with a rake, add it, and then water it on top of it. If you're doing it on a large scale, you want to use one of your actual spreaders, spread it evenly throughout the area, and then till that nutrients or that lime or soil acidifier into the actual ground. When you are tilling, a couple of tips: don't do it when the soil is super wet. You'll actually compact the soil more and have a worse problem later on down the road. And then also avoid over-tilling. If you just till and till and till, and you till too deep, you'll dig up a lot of seeds and stuff that have been dormant, so you'll have a burst of weeds, and you also will activate a lot of those microbes, and they'll end up eating through a lot of your organic matter and your nitrogen sources, and you'll end up with a great garden, and then it'll kind of drop off there for a minute. So don't over-till. And when you do till, make sure the conditions are right in the medium. So if we've got the right soil texture and the right soil pH, then we can kind of move on to nutrients. Once again, soil test. Do either a lab test or your own home test, but definitely know what you're adding and why you're adding it. And then think about what's been growing in that area. If you've been growing the same crop in the same area for a long time, and those plants use high levels of potassium or high levels of phosphorus, or if you're growing a ton of greens and they're using a lot of nitrogen, those are probably what you're going to have to add back. If you're doing proper crop rotation, then you'll see a little less of that, but crop rotation can't be done in all gardens. So if you've done your test and you're low in nitrogen, we recommend something like this blood meal. This is 1200 nitrogen. Great to green up plants, great to keep your garden green all summer long and keep those leafy greens growing really fast. The bone meal down here also has a little bit of nitrogen, but this is what I would also recommend if you need phosphorus. So a lot of heavy fruiting and flowering plants will really use up the phosphorus potassium. So if you find yourself needing some more phosphorus, this has a little nitrogen and also has high levels of phosphorus in it. And then when you find yourself needing potassium, the potash and the rock phosphate would be a great one to go with. These will give you the NPK that you need to keep your plants happy, but there are other nutrients other than nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium your plants need. Those are called trace minerals or micronutrients like zinc and copper, boron, things like that. We're going to get those by using azomite in this scenario. This is a blend of trace minerals, once again added to some kind of spreader or just top dressed into your plants. Or you can use green sand. I recommend azomite, but green sand is also a great thing to introduce to your garden on a regular basis. Will help with soil structure, and also as it breaks down, it's got a bunch of trace minerals in it. So these will get the trace minerals, and then we have the macronutrients by your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. If you don't need a specific nutrient, or you're just looking for an all-purpose one to get the job done without having to mix or any kind of figuring out, these products over here are some examples of things that you can use in your garden with very little mixing. This company, Organically Done, is made here in Michigan. That's where we're located, and we love to represent local products. And these guys make a lot of different products. The one here is oyster shell, which is a great product for calcium. If calcium is used a ton by plants that are producing heavy fruits and flowers. They also make fish bone meal, humic acid, feather meal, amongst other things. One of the other ones I have right here is their tomato vegetable mix. This is perfect for any kind of tomato. The beefsteak all the way to cherry, and then just vegetables in general, leafy greens, peppers, onions, these kind of things. This one bag will get it done. It's basically a blend of these mixes, blend of this for you. Top dress it in, water it, or mix it into your soil and till it in. And if you're using large containers outside, or you want to fill up some large containers with some soil that's got a lot of nutrients in it, so you don't have to reapply fertilizer very often, if at all, throughout the summer, they call that a super soil mix. This product by Organically Done is great. The Organic Easy, it takes about 8 bags or so of potting soil, depending on which potting soil you're using, and 1 bag of this to make super soil. Very simple recipe, and it also you can mix this into about 4.5 cubic feet of soil, and you'll have a whole area that's completely ready to plant in. It's got a ton of nutrients, everything you need, NP, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all your trace minerals. So great. Super simple way to make super soil for the summer. And then next up we have Happy Frog. These guys have been around forever. They always got great simple products to use, and their 555 all-purpose is something that you could use with pretty much any plant. This is also great to add into some kind of compost tea if you're trying to make it more of a fertilizer tea. The 555 is something great to add to your tea mixes. And then we also have their fruit and flower, which is very similar to the vegetable and tomato. It's great for pretty much all fruiting and flowering plants. These guys also make a bulb food. I know if you guys are growing from bulb, the bulb food's a great one. And then they also make like a soil acid or acid-loving plants mix that's specifically for plants that run at higher pHs. So these are all things to consider when you're getting out there and tilling your garden this summer. Definitely do your tests and do your research. If you can, crop rotate. But yep, if you need anything specifically, I would go with the Espoma line. And if you're just looking for kind of an all-purpose general mix, some of these products right here we have are great. We have all this stuff and way more than this on our website. We couldn't fit it all on one table. So please come back and check us out. Go check out our website. We have a lot of info on there and all these products available. Hope this video helped you guys out, and we will see you next time.